Is this how you stream? I do not understand. What is a stream? What is this thing? What is this? Is this how you stream? Okay. I have heard things about this Apex Legends. I will destroy it. And everyone who plays against me. Do not believe the lies. Do not believe what she says about me. I am a good person. I am good at video games. I am good with women. I did not kill those billions and billions of people. It is blatant propaganda by the Jedi Order. Do not believe the lies. What is this weak shit? That's right. Correct. Only the cool brooding types. Yes. 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 Okay. 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 I am ready to find. I'm ready to make friends. I'm going to make friends on this game. I am going to make friends. Everybody's going to love me. Everybody's gonna say, hey Kylo, you're a really cool dude. You get all the ladies. And everybody loves you and respects you. True story. That's what's going to happen here. It is I, the one and only, the true Dark Lord, true gamer, the best gamer, the most elite of gamers, Kylo Ren, who everybody wants to play this game with, who's definitely had sex multiple times. This is a fact. I can provide you phone numbers. Why does nobody believe me? I am not a liar. I am Kylo Ren. I am the real Kylo Ren.
Let's go for a ride.
Spent gunpowder. Smells like victory.
Excellent. Time to destroy more opponents.
Weak shit. Weak shit.
Hey, earlier.
This is your champion.
What's up?
No matter what you run, just how you use
That's
it.
why he is dead.
This is awesome. I'm the jump master.
You will go where I choose.
This might be a good place to land.
I am the best jump master.
What the hell? Why do you sound like Balrog? Who is that?
It is
Do it
I.
again!
one and only, the strongest. Kylo Ren.
You got a large pickle in your throat or something?
If you have to breathe.
I will destroy you
Sounds like he's got a pickle in his throat.
and all of it. Do not make fun of me. Do you know who my dad is?
Give me something. Give me it. Give me something. Give me. You want, here. I hate this place. This place sucks. Oh shit, thanks. Wait, let me get some ammo. Let me get some ammo.
This way.
Let me get some ammo.
Might be something good this way.
Alright, you ready to kink? Ready to kink some cuts? Let's kink some cuts. Yo, where are you going, Blue Man Group?
I will operate this area here. Spitfire here.
I'm actually like really cool.
Fire! Whenever I spit fire.
RE-45 here. Got our first worm food, compadres.
We're inside the ring.
It's go time! Grappling.
Diapers. Spit diapers. That's when you talk shit.
I will destroy
Yeah, let's
you.
go towards the fighting right now. Go. Go. Go straight at it. At it, go.
Contact
Like a
with
maggot.
hostile.
Right.
Let's do it.
I have no idea what's going on here. My audio is just being open. my father. Oh my gosh.
Oh! Fuck you doing?
Okay, I need to change these audio settings.
I will destroy the audio settings and all of it. I will destroy everything. I will destroy everything. I will make this stream watchable. I will make this stream tolerable. I will do this. I don't understand what's happening, but I think I'm compressing stuff. I want to install a guitar pedal. Okay. Okay. Watch me destroy everybody. Watch me destroy everybody and destroy everything. I will play this game. I will destroy everyone. My girlfriend will talk to me again. True story. The voice pedal was not working. I will destroy everything. Hello. Do you believe the separatist lies?
Hey, let's go already, friend.
I am Bloodhunter. You can call me Bloodhound.
Introducing your champion.
Opening season. No time for an FNG.
This might be a good place to land.
Better lie below.
Okay. Where are we dropping?
see in this thing. God damn it. I deserve that. Oh, ow. Oh, wow. Oh, wow, that sucks. Ow, why is that? Sorry. Oof. Ow.
Gotta hop up here. I need shields.
I'm just like... well, the thing to learn here is don't get a rhinoplasty and then wear a Kylo Ren mask, because it hurts like hell. Ow. Oh. Oh, fuck. Here we go again. Ow. I won that round. I won everything. Don't believe the resistance lies.
Ours. Solo's Wookiee is here. The Wookiee is here. Beware his strength. Chewbacca. The Wookiee. The smuggler. He's come. Leave the smuggler to me. The smuggler is here. The smuggler comes to their aid. Bring the smuggler to me. The gambler. There. A general. We have a new foe. A general. I am ready. I hope you are too. Won't aid him. The princess. No. A general. The princess must be stopped. The princess.
Prepared and ready.
The princess myself. A Jedi. A Jedi.
Time to see if all those drills have paid off.
A Jedi is here. Come, Jedi. I am your death. The man who betrayed Vader. The girl. Rey. I know her. I sense her. She is mine. She is here. Unfocused power. Rey, the ancient Jedi Master. That
Introducing your champion.
Power. An ancient Jedi Master. He is here. A shriveled remnant of the Jedi. An ancient Jedi is here.
I'm the jump master. Ready up.
The girl. Rey, you would be surprised. I am a Knight of Ren. My power will flow.
This is a good LZ.
Silence. Not to you. Do not speak
Copy
of the
that.
Supreme Leader. You have no choice. No. She turned on her father too. I can show you power. Train you.
Hit the jets. We're dropping hot.
Surrender to me. Surely you see it. You are dead. The First Order will prevail. Leave this battle or die. You cannot stop our victory. The Supreme Leader is wise. You chose your moment poorly. Run. Run, Solo.
Oof. Nope, turn around.
The dark side.
Let's go this way.
Do not oppose me. Cowards!
First blood. FNGs always go first.
Enemy at last. I've been waiting. Come, join me. So we meet. Strike at me. Scream if you wish. Did you hope to stop me? You should have run. You live at my whim. The Knights of Ren come for you. Leader Snoke commands your death. I will deliver your end. Your mission will fail. Come. Fight to your end.
I need a gun.
Don't disappoint me. Perhaps you'll
Beginning countdown.
try. Such a fool.
Good. We're inside.
Let's reposition you.
Enemy has been eliminated.
All part of the plan. Kill them all.
A champion just fell.
Enjoy
must
this
not be very
as we
good.
planned. Fire at will. Choose your targets. My
I have two Havocs.
Let us begin. There. You see? Now. Now we begin. Ready your weapons. Ready. Take aim. Show no pity. Punish our foes. Contain the foe while I begin the slaughter. No prolonged battles. You know what to do. Obliterate the enemy. Let none survive. Our enemy must die. You amuse me. You are unworthy. An army cannot save you. So much fear. You believe you can win. Blasters can't stop me. You dare hurt me? Too difficult. You face the darkness. You will soon be dust. Legions are nothing before me. Weep and flail and die. I'll climb a mountain of your bodies. I will not
Extended
be
heavy
driven
mag here.
back. Do
Level
not
3.
anger me. So devoted to
Backpack
your
here.
cause.
Level
If you
2.
could kill me, you'd have done so. Will I slay your families next? You lack humility. How many have I slain? Our victory is certain. Thin the
Havoc
herd.
here.
Leader
Gotta hop
Snoke
up here.
guides us.
Turbocharged
Desperate
body
mob.
shield here.
Do not let
Level
them
1.
surround us. Their numbers mean nothing. Scatter them. Strike in unison.
New
As you
kill
were
leader
trained,
appointed.
fight on. Die. You
Heads
will
up.
be replaced.
New kill leader.
They are many, but without focus. Increase firepower. Suppression tactics. Now. Stay at range. I'll close the distance. Fear them, but hate them more. Retake the advantage. See to your duty. Rally your
SMG
foes.
here.
Cowardice is treason. No retreat. You understand? Our victory must be complete. Stay in proximity. We march as one. Our foes are treacherous. Be wary. Through me, you will know Leader Snoke. Through service, your life gains meaning. Where are they? I want the enemy. Find them. Erase all doubt from your mind. I grow impatient. Guide me. Grandfather. First they die, then conquer. True power must be used. Why aren't they here? You were chosen well. We're plotting something. I sense them. Where? This moment. Destinies diverge here. I can feel them. Desperate and afraid. The Empire fell. We will not. Ready yourself. You cling to hope. You hate. But not enough. Give up. You know this is futile. Why do you struggle? The First Order will rule the galaxy. You are a speck. No one will remember your defeat. I hear your panicked
Half the
breath.
squad's
Your
left.
friends are gone. I could spare you. You have no destiny. So slow to kneel. Swear your loyalty. Light cannot last. My troops could finish you. Do you weep? Your heart beats swiftly. Turn on your allies. You bore me. This is no threat. Barely a battle. Be ready to move on. Be thorough. Flanking positions. Close and surround. Almost insulting. Remain on guard. Watch for reinforcements. No excuse for failure. Too simple. They cower before us. Be merciless. You serve me well. Effectively done. Stay in formation. Eliminate the rabble. One final pass. See them simper. Nearly finished. I'll show you the dark side. It's long past time I was called. The blood of Vader flows through me. I will guide you. Only I can save you.
Well, that was a fun soliloquy. I mean, I control you.
Catalyst.
Good work. We're inside the next ring.
Greetings, I'm Shad, and out of the many, many years of me being a Star Wars fan, it's kind of interesting in retrospect how I've never...
Let's reposition here.
Heard that. There may be a shooter nearby. Care package being They spotted me. Time to avoid running. Package coming in. Need to recharge my shields.
Contact.
Oh no, there is an airstrike on our position. Watch out.
Recharging my shields.
I am taking fire, friends.
Come on in. Old Painless is waiting. Spotted. Reloading.
Recharging shield.
Right here, taking shots.
It is so hard to see in this thing. Holy shit. I am like suffering. Oh. Okay. Nope. We're not doing this. Someone who loves you very much. Oh my gosh. Oh my god.
Moving here.
Fucking hurts. Hurts, dude. Hurts, man. Hurts. Oof. Oof. Okay. We're not doing this no more. This is dumb. This is real dumb. This is not happening no more. Ow. Oh, you could see it. Oh, oof, right there. Oh, that hurts. Oof. Oh, ow. Okay. Okay, I am, you know, surprising to hear, right? I'm not actually Kylo Ren. Ow. Oof. My head actually hurts really bad. Oh no. Okay. What's going on with my face? Oh, that is not good. Oof. One thing they don't tell you about a rhinoplasty is that your nose hurts forever if anything just remotely brushes up against it. Okay, we're not playing as Kylo Ren anymore. It just hurts. Ow. Oh wait, shit. I need to open mic, cancel. Okay, my mic was fucked up for some reason on Apex, so let's have that fixed. Yeah? Ow. My nose hurts so bad. Ow. Okay. Let's have a legit round. Oh, my forehead hurts and my fucking nose hurts. Oh no. Oh, wearing that feels so bad. Oh. Ow. Oof. That just hurts. My neck hurts. My everything hurts. I wanna play some Apex and not suck at it because neck hurts. Ow. Hello.
Ready and excited.
We're gonna win. Everything's gonna be okay.
Rock up. It's time to move out.
True story.
We have no choice but to win. This is your champion.
It's the season opening. It's really fun to do stuff. This is awesome. I'm the jump master.
Oh, okay. We're gonna wait a little bit. Oh, where'd it go? No, why? Bitch. No! What? What's going? I'm by myself.
Let's land here.
Well, this just hurts my feelings, man. Okay. Oof. We're all alone. Have to be a little bit stealthy. Be a little bit clever. Okay. So let's just go out in this open water here, yeah? Okay, let's get the fuck out of here. Okay, everybody dropped over that way, so I'm gonna... This is insulting. One guy drops out, and then everyone's like, fuck off. So. That's what you get for wishing everybody good luck. Yep. True story. Okay, if I'm lucky, I can do a thing. Just kinda wait. Because I do not want to get in a firefight so long as I can. Because... Fuck, dude.
It's zipline time.
Attention. There is a new kill leader.
Okay. Okay, what am I doing? Okay. We're just gonna wait out here for a little bit. This is real bad. I'm alone. Okay. Okay, well that's good. That's good news.
Half the squads are gone. Cool.
I wish I could say this is gonna be like a super eventful match, but to be honest, I am just gonna wait. I have good armor. I have a good gun. What? I can't put the optic on? Ah, that's bullshit.
Yes, I'm inside the next ring. Who's ready to fly on a zip line? I am.
Care package being delivered.
Oof. It's over there. Did I just try to get up my decoy one? Yeah, definitely. Okay. Okay. Where can I zipline to? Oh yeah. No, no! Fucking hell.
The enemies are shooting at me. Grappling.
Round 2. Beginning ring countdown.
No.
Recharging shield.
Okay.
fly on a zip line. I am. Just a minute until the ring closes. At least I don't have to wait for anyone. Ring's not
Jesus.
that far. I love it when that happens.
Okay, come on, come on, come on, come on, come on, come on. Let's get in, let's get in. Come on.
30 seconds. That's half a minute.
Okay, thanks for the reminder. Thanks. Okay, okay. We're in. We're in. Okay.
Phew. Inside the next ring. I love this.
You are now witnessing Natalie's pacifist run.
Care package being delivered.
Okay. Okay, that's my escape. Just in case. Okay. So what happened? Oh my god. Okay. What can I do? No! No! Okay. Let's find an actual hiding spot. Shit.
more enemy squads. Easy peasy.
Okay.
Phew. Using grapple.
Round 4. Beginning ring countdown.
Yes, I'm inside the next ring. Only one more step up the zip line. Using grapple.
You know, it's not about the kills. It's about the friends you didn't make along the way. So much detail in this game. Fucking kudos. Stealth run. Shit.
In progress.
Phew. Inside the next ring. I love this.
Whoa!
Fire, friends.
Oh!
That was exciting. I hope you had fun.
Fuck! Wow! Oh my gosh. Whew. Ah! Well... No! Oh, that was bad. That was really bad. Oh, we got... Do we have any... Yo.
Hello.
I'm streaming, by the way. Sorry.
Oh.
Does anybody want to play a video game?
What video game?
The swears anymore.
What?
Is it a YouTube stream or a Twitch stream?
It's everything.
Oh, wait.
Dang.
Both? Wait.
Yeah, you could do both.
Are you an 18 plus channel?
Yeah, of course.
F word.
Okay.
Got him.
Xbox, turn off.
What game are you playing out of?
Apex. If you want to join it.
Ooh. Ooh.
Let's do it.
Hold on. I'm gonna have to say no, and for one reason. I played 4 hours of Apex today, and I won 1 game.
Okay. Do you have something alternate to suggest?
What?
Do you have an alternative to suggest?
Like a game?
Yeah.
What games do you have that you'd be willing to play stream like right now?
Oh gosh. I think I still have Battlefield 5. I have PUBG. I have Tarkov.
I just got done playing Tarkov.
I don't really want to. I really don't want to play Tarkov. It got old real quick.
Hey, it just wiped, so.
What? Oh? It like legit wiped?
Yeah, it wiped like 2 days ago.
So I have a bunch of new gear.
So, you have everything that you're gonna start with.
Okay.
But you're gonna have technically no gear.
What?
You get to start over.
Yeah, so
means everybody starts new again.
No, I know what wipe means. I'm saying, did they get rid of all the default guns that you start with?
No.
Okay.
You always start with
they
those.
added new guns and they added a bunch of new gear and stuff.
Okay.
They added the SVD and they added a 308 semi-auto rifle available at level 2 skier.
Okay. So do you wanna?
It's a new Vepr.
What do you wanna do?
Well, I haven't eaten all day, so I'm gonna go make food. I was actually gonna do that before I joined the Discord. I'm gonna go do that, and then I think I'm gonna play Sekiro for half an hour and then go to bed because I have work in the morning.
I'm on my weekend. You know, I have Star Wars Battlefront 2. I haven't played that in a while.
You might remember when you start playing it. Actually, no. I loved that game. That game was really fun.
Yeah,
Why did my friends stop playing it?
Okay. It's gotta update.
Rip.
Yeah.
Closed it. Oh shit. Dang it.
What's going on?
I squished my dab.
What?
I don't have a dab tool.
Oh.
THC, you know.
Gotcha.
Weed stuff. I'm using a multi-tool as my dropper, and I closed the multi-tool when it had a lot of extract on the tip. Now it's all over the inside.
Oh no. I guess you could take like a lighter and just heat it up from underneath or something.
That's true. Yeah, I mean it might go all over my table, but maybe I can drip it into the.
Just lick it.
That'll work.
Just get that contact high. Oof, man, oof.
I got a lot. So
that word's banned. Can't do that.
It's not banned on the Nat stream.
Ooh.
Banned from the Discord.
What other words are banned in the Discord?
I think rip.
Yep.
Really?
Yep.
I can't remember.
Also a bunch of like actual slurs, I guess.
Yeah.
There's one exception.
Gamer. The most oppressed minority.
Amen. We will rise up. We will rise up.
Sad gamer hours.
Oh, what's happening, Cooper? Why is it sad gamer hours?
Actually, it's the lowly incel that's the most oppressed minority. Thank you very much. I have wristphoria. My wrists are too small. What woman is going to want to date a man with wrists like this?
Soon I will be a wizard.
In the KKK sense, because that's what community incels. Okay. Fucking Disney.
It is. I was doing a joke stream like earlier, just a little bit ago. That was me in like a Kylo Ren costume, like.
Just swinging a lightsaber in your.
No, it was me playing Apex in the Kylo Ren helmet, and I was basically just like getting my ass handed to me because I can't see while I wear it.
My buddy bought one of those Saber Forge lightsabers.
Yeah, I mean I have some expensive ass lightsabers. Holy shit.
They're pretty legit.
I have an actual Graflex 3-cell flash gun. The thing that they made Luke Skywalker / Rey's lightsaber out of. It was expensive as hell, but it's what they made it out of. It's pretty. Feels good to hold.
Only 6 green screens left in stock? Well, shit, I better buy one.
Wait, for what?
I'm buying a green screen.
Oh, nice. Welcome to the club. I'm being green screened right now.
Let's go.
Just paint everything in your room green.
No, chroma key paint is actually pretty expensive.
That's fine. Just go Walmart and buy some green.
No, it don't work the same.
It's not as much green.
You'd be fine.
I mean, usually it's just that non-chroma paint reflects light weirdly.
I'm gonna have to like thumbtack this thing to my ceiling.
Dude, why don't you get a upright like set, like a drape set. That's what I have. Yeah, man. I mean, you're doing YouTube.
Collapsible flex out chroma key green / blue twist backdrop background stand.
Wait, is that one of those like expanding ones?
Collapsible flex.
Yeah, those things are garbage. Don't buy one of those.
Okay.
Unless you're like shooting something on set, like.
What's it called again?
Hold on. What do I have? It's like it's just like a. Yeah, I would just like look on Amazon like green screen set or something like that. Green screen kit? Yeah, just a backdrop set. Like a...
Well, there's this one. It's $32.
Let me...
Studio Video Metal Support Stand System.
Did you put it in admin chat?
Will right now. Is that big enough? I don't think that's wide enough.
It's probably not. You'll have to find like a small green screen to go along with it. You can't have any folds in your green screen or else it'll fuck up. Here, like the one of the suggested items actually.
70 centimeters. Wait. Oh, 70 centimeters tall. 60 centimeters across.
Hmm.
How much is that? Where's my fucking tape measure?
What's your budget?
What's my budget?
Yeah.
I want to spend like $100 Mac.
Here. I mean, this will be like serviceable, but it'll also be kind of garbage, but it'll do the job.
And I'm finding out how long 60. Oh wait.
Yeah, I just sent a thing.
That's not big enough at all.
10 feet by 12 feet?
Oh, 10 feet by 12 feet. Oh no, I was talking about the one that I was just looking at. Way too small. Way too small. This one? 10 by 12?
Wait, this one's even smaller and it's cheaper. What the fuck?
How the hell am I gonna get that in my room? Oh, it's a kit. Is there a .ca for this?
I mean, just put .co.ca or whatever.
Yep.
Here. Here's also one that seems to be well rated for being ungodly cheap.
This is $200 on .ca, but it's
Wait, what?
It's 50 on .com. What?
Shit, dude. Look at the second link that I posted. Yeah, I just typed in green screen kit.
I'm gonna need one that stands on one post.
One post, why?
Because I don't have a lot of floor room in my room. And the only way I would do this
Okay.
actually, the only way I could do this is if my green screen
Is it for streaming?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, like, I'm looking at the size of those feet right now, and there's no fucking way. There's no way that fits in my room.
Here.
I don't I need like.
Here's something.
I only need like 4 feet.
Okay. Then here, I'm giving you options, but it's.
Actually, wait. No, I could do this in OBS. Hold up.
Wait, what?
In OBS.
What about it?
I have OBS on.
Okay.
And I'm putting it in front of me, more or less. And I'm measuring across how long my webcam view is behind me.
Yeah, I mean my screen is like 10 by 12, but I only end up using like 6 feet of it. But like you have to.
Yeah, I only need like 3 feet. So if I can just find like on it. Wait.
Well, no, you need slightly wider than 3 feet because cameras don't work that way. But
okay, what?
I posted like a ton of links to different things.
Okay. Where? Hold on. Oh shit, so many. Okay, that's the one we already looked at. I'm gonna have so many tabs open. 9 by 13. This one.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, man. They're all various.
That's the one we just looked at.
Okay.
Is it this one? Okay. 95 collapsible. Where does this hang? Like above me?
It hangs on its own stand.
On it? Oh, it has a stand.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Okay, yeah, no, this will totally work.
Mm-hmm.
How long is that? 75 by 58? I could fit that. Okay, this one will actually work. Elgato green screen.
Yeah, that's what I was looking for.
Shit.
I don't know if they still make them anymore.
Let me switch to .ca and see if the listings aren't $400. Apparently they're unavailable on .ca.
I would just look up collapsible greens or pull up green screen, something like that.
These sellers. Currently, there are no sellers that can deliver this item to your location. Okay, so collapsible green screen stand. That's a 5 by 7. No. There's an 8 by 8 that stands on really tiny little wonky legs. Wait. Okay, hold on. I want to see a picture of this thing IRL, because it just, okay. It says Glide Gear 8x8 gaming photography video screen, wrinkle-free backdrop, 4x colors, blue, green chroma key, and white with collapsible stand.
Does it come with multiple colors of fabric or something, or is it just?
Hey, it's $300.
Dude, everything in America is apparently cheaper. I don't know what to tell you, dude.
No, this is on .com. I'm switching to .ca. Available from these sellers for $1,200.
That's insane. That's dumb as hell. You shouldn't have to spend more than $100 on a green screen at this point.
Holy shit! Whoever made that listing, I'm gonna punch in the face.
Ugh.
Yeah.
Honestly, I could just get if I ordered a light stand.
Yeah.
Could I make that light stand hold a PVC?
Yeah. I mean, you could just get a clamp, or you could get
Josh, I got a ton of light stands.
You could also just buy yourself a C clamp set.
If you want to check it out, I got a bunch of light stands in a container.
Yeah. You can also get foam core.
Foam core?
Yeah.
Like foam core PVC?
No, foam core. It's a. Oh.
That cord.
Oh, it shows up so weirdly.
What is this stuff?
Foam core?
Yeah.
It's like a poster board, and you can get it in all sorts of colors.
Yeah. What do I do with it?
Sometimes it comes in chroma green, and you can attach it to like a C stand and have that act as your green screen.
Just find some green playmats. Just lace your wall with them.
Honestly, I'm keen to just get a blanket and pin it to my ceiling. At this.
If you have a spare wall, man, you just get a green screen and iron it and.
I'll describe the layout of my room for you. Okay, so there's my desk, which is right in front of me, and it's about, I don't know, I want to say it's 8.5 feet, maybe.
Is Battlefront really taking this long to load, or is it just not gonna start?
It's pushed all the way up to my wall, as far as I can go back, and it sticks out like 5 or 6 feet.
It's
10
just
feet behind me. Not even. It's like, no, yeah, 10 feet behind me is my bed, which is a queen-size bed that fills up the rest of my room. So basically, I have like an alleyway in my room of walking space. You can walk to my door or to my desk.
Yeah, I don't know, dude. I'm
I would try and hang it from the ceiling if anything.
I'm currently gonna dedicate an entire room to streaming in my 3D printing room and stuff, and then I'm gonna move my bedroom out of my bedroom into my living room.
I wish I could just face
because I've resolved to not impress women ever.
Nice.
That's how you win.
Honestly, me neither.
Hey, I haven't even impressed myself.
She should have her own place. I have my own place, okay? Mine just happens to be a workshop that I sleep at. I'm closing down the downtown studio. I figured that it's just not worth the money.
Is no one using it?
Yeah, no one's using it, and also the rent's just a bit high for like what I can afford, and yeah, I don't feel like going downtown just to use my 3D printer anymore.
I feel that. Oh, so you're doing it for the 3D printer?
Well, I have 3 3D printers. I just like
Want one more?
I don't occupy them enough to justify having them in a downtown studio.
Okay. Does no one else use them?
Yeah. They don't know how. They just never decide to learn. So.
Yeah. Get a haircut. I was like, I'll start worrying about my hair when it starts getting annoyingly long on the side. And I just looked at it, or someone felt it, and I realized that, oh, fuck. fuck, it's crazy that my hair can get super long on all sides, and I'm like, I look at all these people with like super long hair, and I'm like, damn, what would that be like? I realize, wait, I think I can do that.
But do you really want to?
No, I don't. I really don't. I think it'd be cool for like 5 seconds.
And then you buzz it off.
My hair's heavy as fuck. It should fall. Dense. What's that fucking noise?
What?
I heard like a howling.
I don't know, dude. I don't think Battlefront's gonna happen.
That's a rip.
It's just on its like splash screen and it's just never going anywhere, man.
Yikes. Okay. Fuck. I need food, but I really want to fucking put this green screen in my car.
Food or green screen?
I just want to play Battlefront, man. Oh, something's changing.
I literally might just get a sheet. This one looks really, like the fabric that it's made out of looks super light.
Muslin? It's actually a very heavy fabric.
What's it? Hang on. Made from non-woven fabrics, which is a good alternative product for professional background cloth. It could be as a replacement for muslin cotton.
Okay.
That's one of its,
Wait, are you allowed to stream Battlefront? Because it has like so much freaking copyrighted music in it.
Yes, you just have to turn them. You just have there's a setting in the audio settings that I believe allows you to turn off copyrighted music, but there will still be music. It'll just be not copyrighted.
Music. Off? No music? Or
maybe game settings?
Yeah. It just says music off. Okay.
Swear to God, there was a setting to turn off copyrighted music. It was was that in the first one? No. I don't know.
Oh well, I just turned music off, I guess.
Play your own.
Play random royalty free music.
Right. How do I
Monster Cat or some shit.
campaign? Okay, yes.
Oh wait, are you trying not to get the monetization needed from your YouTube?
No, I just don't want it shut down on Facebook because Facebook's like super aggressive on copyright.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Fuck.
Yeah, it was shutting down my Grist streams for a while because Grist forgot to not greenlight their soundtrack for game streaming, which is like really dumb of them. But I fixed that myself. Okay, we're gonna play the storyline.
I got one of those licensing things recently for music.
What do you mean? Oh, just like a copyright claim?
Yeah, so you can play like a certain kind of music.
Oh, okay. So yeah, did you buy into like a Jingle Punks or something like that?
No, I got one for free. It's a chill hop. It's a chill hop license.
Okay.
And it gives you like some sweet chill hop fucking artists, and one of them is actually one of my favorite chill hop artists. So
cool.
Perfect.
Wow.
I can play Swam. Oh yes.
I have a few royalty-free licenses, I guess. I just don't.
It's just listed.
Like they're really good sites. One's Epidemic Sound, has like a ton of really good tracks. Dude, who's on your definitely going to die in the next Star Wars shortlist?
C-3PO.
Yep, that's my number one. I said C-3PO is definitely gonna die.
Absolutely.
He is.
So hard.
So like he's already died in one Star Wars film. He's going to die in this one. Like, I mean, if you count Episode 2, he kind of dies in that one too, or at least a part of him died that day.
If they take
Die Jedi Skull.
If they take R2 from us,
I kind of figured it would be weird if R2 died in this one.
well, yeah, because it sort of wouldn't make sense.
I figure like maybe if like a major ship explodes or something and like R2's still on board or whatever, like that would be
how it's gonna happen.
But like C-3PO, he's going down in a fiery fury. Like he's going to he's got a gun.
Bullshit.
C-3PO is going to like go full K2SO except like even more tragic. Like he's going to fucking go apeshit. He's gonna go ham on a bunch of stormtroopers. Yep. That's what. That's if I were to change one thing about The Last Jedi, it would be that C-3PO like rams the.
Plays a way bigger role.
It's not only that he plays a bigger role, but that he like last minute like notices what Admiral Holdo is about to do, and instead like locks her out of the room and then like does it himself. Like I think that would be just like so like weirdly in character, but it would also just be like way even more of like an oh shit kind of moment. Okay, so here's my death list. I already wrote it out. Okay, already dead in our Force Ghosts, Luke and Leia, and I guess Palpatine. And I guess if you really wanted to go weird, then maybe like Anakin or Darth Vader in some capacity. Because James Earl Jones is like about to like die. Like the guy is fucking old as hell, and it would be kind of cool to have like one last Darth Vader. And then most likely to die, highest to lowest, C-3PO, Kylo Ren, Chewbacca. And then I had kind of weird if they did die, R2-D2, Lando, Rose, and Janna. And definitely are not going to die because we want to continue to make money, Rey, Finn, and Poe.
Amen.
Yeah, I can see it.
Why is this game just not going? Is it on like a spinning hard drive? Did I put it on a spinning hard drive? Am I a dummy?
Maybe.
I bet I put it on. I might have put it on a spinning hard drive.
I could get it Sunday. My green screen. Pop.
Thanks, Amazon Prime.
Yes, I want you to charge my debit card.
Oh, here we go.
Wait, maybe I have a honey code. Low chance for savings. Coupon.
Oh, that looks so good.
You already have the best price. We applied 2 coupons, but Amazon can't.
Captain, she's
I always forget that like
Deception,
these games look so nice on like the RTX.
extraction.
Oh,
She's special forces.
beautiful.
Thank you. Your order has been placed. More items to consider. Pat Russian Soviet Army Air Force Fur Military Yushang. And there's like an entire section of them.
Yeah. Well, it depends on
Inferno
how many
Squad.
things you looked at on the website.
I feel like I looked at it maybe once. Oh, this one's got a fold. Oh my god.
Oh wow, with ray tracing, Iden Versio looks really fucking good. Holy shit.
It must be important.
This one's got a.
Look at
This
me.
one's got like. What's that?
So let's talk
you know those
facts.
face masks that are
That's what I'm
Velcro?
here for.
Yeah.
What are those?
You
made
have
of?
the activation code.
I
I've got the
fucking
ability
know
to help you
Velcro.
out.
No, they have
Just give me the
Velcro like
code.
straps.
Damn, you can just see every pore on their face. Wow.
They're made out of like soft.
You know we can really use
Dude,
someone
the
like you.
cameras. They're made out of like soft.
Just help me and I'll help you. It's that easy.
I don't know.
It's like a soft, squishy. Like
I'm gonna get
it's
what I
kind of
want
like
eventually.
what wetsuits are made of.
My best technicians are
Yeah.
slicing into your droid
It's
right
a
now.
Ushanka with a neoprene face mask.
Take on my offer.
Dude, I'd use that for airsoft.
All I want is the code.
I wore when I went to Russia.
The Empire's time has come.
There, and they were like, "Oh,
You don't have to go down with it."
very Canadian." I'm like, "Yeah."
You're right.
I wore my
The Empire's
one.
time
I have the
has
same
come.
one you have, the red black one.
You ever played the story mode on Battlefront?
VZ 626.
Yeah, it's like not super great, but the graphics are amazing. Holy balls. I just saw it on YouTube, but screen records don't do it justice.
I have to order my mom a Brita.
What?
I have to order my mom a Brita.
I thought you said Beretta for a second. I was like,
No, a Brita.
You just hand her a Beretta pistol, and you're like, "Here's your Beretta."
Your mom's gonna be packing heat.
One Brita water filter can replace 300 standard 500 milliliter water bottles.
I should get myself some water.
Just scrolling through hunting, fishing, like outdoor stuff on Amazon, and they're selling 50 cal ammo cans.
Wow.
$25.
An ID-10 tactical droid. You were way more advanced than the ID-9.
No, those are 30 cal.
Slicing into you is not going to be easy.
50 cals more.
Wish I could, but we don't have the droid's access code.
They're nice for storage.
So expensive.
The captain's working on that in the detention center.
You want to buy real ammo
Until
with it?
then, the only way to access this droid's data is to pry the memory core out of its shell.
The guys from the unit, like, yo, just give me a couple
Which
ammo
can't
cans.
do anything if the droid is deactivated.
They just throw them in the
Until it hears the
recycling.
access code, this
Really?
ID-10
Yeah,
can't do a thing.
recycling it.
Please, just let me work in peace.
Understood. I shall remain silent until that ID-10 tactical unit.
After we'd open up our cans up at like 5,
Droid,
6.
execute the plan.
They just
Download
take
the
them and
ship's
throw them on the
schematics from their
back of the
computers,
truck.
then come find me.
Then yeah, when we go back to the fucking unit, they just throw them into a big container and they go get crushed and melted
We have an
down.
enemy droid on the loose. Send reinforcements
What a
immediately.
waste.
That is what I would say if anyone could hear. Please. That's not allowed.
We got one of the big tall ammo cans. They're like for the 40 mic belts.
Oh, these are weird controls. Ventilation system. Oh, okay.
You worry too much. Do I? You know who's in our cell phone, right? Some big shot Imperial. Special forces. Exactly. I don't like it. That's why.
This is all just so rudimentary. What is up with these controls? Holy wow. I can't change my... It's like a super locked off camera.
Security clearance. You'll have to slice open doors.
I love seeing what my old high school classmates are doing on Snapchat stories. I think that guy just cooked an entire
Droid, slice the nearest door. And
Okay, but
acknowledge.
how do I do... What the fuck is going on here? Is like my controller connected? Or...
Are you at the door? Try slicing it
It's like telling me to slice open a door and I don't. It's not letting me look at the door.
I'm not allowed to look at the door. Okay, does anybody watch PewDiePie?
No, because he's a Nazi.
Okay.
Back in the day.
Dude, I've missed the Nazi days. He made a You Lack You Lose, I think yesterday, and he said that he wanted to make a whole video about the Sonic Frick kid. Like, you freaking fricks! He made that video today.
God.
It's called The Frickening. It's in there.
Are you at the door? Try slicing it open.
This game is ungodly broken. What the fuck is going on? No, why? Somebody please look at my stream and just tell me if I'm like crazy or not. What's going on?
Remember, if you don't have security clearance, you'll have to slice open doors.
Okay, fuck, these earbuds are super cool.
It looks like you're looks like your camera is stuck.
Yeah.
Droid, slice the nearest door and acknowledge.
Oh! I did it! What the hell is going on? I think it's like locked in that like camera mode that. You know that camera mode that like cutscenes are in, like that like barely lets you do anything.
Yeah.
Jesus. You know that camera mode that like cutscenes are in?
They're all like $70 or more. Those are the APs.
God damn it. I guess I have to restart. Or so, what the hell?
I think I'm gonna go to bed.
Same. I'm getting sleepy.
Honestly, same.
Honestly? Same.
I need food.
Yeah, we all have very good jobs.
Yes!
What do you mean regular jobs? There's plenty of jobs that let you have the weekends off.
I'm not allowed to wake up
Captain,
until 7.
she's highly trained. Deception, infiltration, extraction. She's special forces.
Okay, fuck this. Guess we're not playing some Star Wars tonight because it's